time now for the World Brief and, of course, a review of some of the headlines from today's newspapers around the world. Let's begin at home on the African continent, though, where Thiam, who is the former Credit Suisse chief executive officer, he's effectively been disqualified from running for president of Ivory Coast following a court ruling that found him ineligible. Now, the controversy focuses on Thiam's dual French-Ivorian citizenship, which is why he dropped his French citizenship earlier this year, paving the way for his bid to lead the world's top cocoa producer. Now, the 62-year-old Thiam ran unopposed in a race last week to become the candidate of the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast. Now, the PDCI's support comes after more than a dozen other political opposition groups rallied together to form the Coalition for Peaceful Change in Ivory Coast, which also endorsed Thiam as its leader. Now, the governing RHDP party has not yet announced its candidate, but the current president, 83-year-old Alassane Ouattara, is likely to run for what would be his fourth term in office. Now, three other prominent figures, including former President Laurent Gbagbo, have also been barred from running. Thiam has called the decision an act of democratic vandalism and says that he is determined to run for president in October. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
What I really think is that there's a background of racism there, and a lot of people feel that democracy is just too good for Africans, and they don't really need it, they don't really deserve it. And the kind of regimes we have, well, you know, TIA, this is Africa, okay? So there's a tolerance. And this is something I really resent. I always fight so that Africans are judged exactly by held to the same criteria than the rest of the world.
Well, Elon Musk says that he will cut back his role in Donald Trump's administration after the companies of Tesla profits and revenues plunged during the first 3 months of the year. Now, the car maker reported a 20% drop in automotive revenue in the first quarter of 2025 compared with the same period last year, while profits fell more than 70%. Now, the company warned investors that the pain could continue, declining to offer a growth forecast while saying changing political sentiment could meaningfully hurt demand. In other words, sales slumped and the electric car maker faced a backlash as Musk became a political fixture in the White House. Now, moving forward, Musk says that he will spend only 1 to 2 days per week on government matters. And finally, the Dominican Republic says it has arrested more than 130 Haitian women and children on the first day of a crackdown of undocumented migrants in Santo Domingo's hospitals. Many of the women arrested were pregnant, while others had recently given birth. The crackdown is part of the government's plan, which we discussed on the World Brief back in October, to deport up to 10,000 undocumented migrants a week to stem migration from neighboring Haiti. Though 80,000 Haitians have been deported from the Dominican Republic in the first 3 months of 2025. Now, President Luis Abinader's government, however, has been criticized for its harsh treatment of Haitian migrants, as many are fleeing extreme gang violence and poverty in the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince. Those are your stories. Love to hear your thoughts.
All right. Well, Ivory Coast, Thiam, quite a story, I have to say, because the intrigues around it for me are a little bit curious. So it's Article 48 of the Nationality Code of Ivory Coast that states that if you acquire a second citizenship, then you lose your Ivorian nationality. However, there's a technicality to it, which is that if you have dual citizenship at birth, then you can maintain it. So Thiam's lawyers are saying that they actually provided evidence to show that Thiam's father is French, meaning he was born French and Ivorian. However, the issue, I think the technicality they were able to play on is the fact that he didn't pursue his French citizenship, although he was entitled to it from birth, he only pursued it much later in life. So now there's a question around, is this process free and fair? Because we already see the other opposition candidates, Laurent Gbagbo, Guillaume Soro, Blé Goudé, have also been disqualified from the race. So there's basically no opposition in this election. And this election was a huge opportunity for Alassane Ouattara to show that he's going to bow out gracefully. But many people, especially in Francophone Africa, are now saying that, well, you know what, he's going to get the Macky Sall treatment, which is that if he does not bow to pressure for a free and fair, transparent president, presidential election, then we're going to take to the streets and mount the pressure on him until he does the right thing. So I think there are many things to look at, because, again, we now ask ourselves, when we look at the issue of dual nationality, the world has changed drastically. We came from a time where generally it was not common and it was frowned upon to have dual nationality. But we live in such a global world now that most people have multiple nationalities. Does that make you any less of a citizen? And that make you any less entitled to vying for the biggest office in any of the two countries that you belong to? Is a question to just throw to the floor.
Okay, it seems to me that, look, this conversation about Ivory Coast is about the ambition of Alassane Ouattara, and it's about the irony of the subject. What is the irony of the subject? In 1995, when President Alassane Ouattara, former IMF big chief, wanted to be president of Ivory Coast, the issue was about his nationality. It was said that his father was from Burkina Faso. The same man now who fought at that time to become president is now saying another man, because of his dual nationality, which Thiam has already renounced, we were told, he is now fighting over the same issue. Big irony. The big issue again is that it seems to me that President Alassane Ouattara wants a fourth term in office. Cititism, the same thing that we have always complained about in Africa. I think those are the problems. Thiam, 62 years old, first man to be admitted to the École Polytechnique, brilliant man in terms of his credentials. Worked with Credit Suisse, you said, and all of that. But now he faces the same fate that Alassane Ouattara faced in 1995. And Alassane Ouattara, who wants to sit tight, he's saying he cannot be president. His name has been removed from the electoral roll. There are others, of course. Laurent Gbagbo, who are the other people now? Saro, Charles Blé Goudé, whose names have been removed because Alassane Ouattara wants to sit tight. So that's the main issue about Côte d'Ivoire. Now, Haiti is very important. I will express concern about the attempt or the effort or the decision to deport women, pregnant women, from Dominican Republic, right?
In the Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic. The capital is San Domingo. Now, they share an island, the Ouattara, island on the west, in the northern hemisphere. Haiti is the poorest country in the northern hemisphere. It became independent in 1804. And that country has been in trouble since that 1804. Debt to France, issues with the United States, issues with poverty, human rights, human development in Haiti. And also a lot of crisis in that particular country. To the extent that the UN ambassador of Haiti says that, look, this country is failing, is dying. That's the word that Haiti ambassador to the UN used last week. The special envoy to Haiti of the United States says, look, this country has failed. So we have a country that has been failing since 1805. And now you have the Dominican Republic saying pregnant women who came from Haiti, will have to be expelled. This year, they have expelled over 80,000 persons. Now they are saying On a monthly basis, they will expel over 10,000 people. This is an issue for customary international law. What does customary international law? What does it say about the right of refugees? The 1951 Convention on the Rights of Refugees, the 1967 Protocol on the right of refugees says that if you are a refugee in another country, that host country does not have the right to expel you, to push you to another country where you will be exposed to danger. There is danger in Haiti. That's why the effort by Kenya, the United Nations, to lead forces of 6 nations to protect people of Haiti. Haiti is a dying state. It's a failed state. It's a state that needs to be protected by the United Nations. Now, I summarize by saying that the international community has a responsibility to protect Haiti in the same manner that the international community has a responsibility to protect South Sudan, in the same manner that the international community has a responsibility to protect Ukraine.
Agreed.
In other words, we have a troubled international order, either in economics, as they are realizing at the Washington meetings of IMF and the World Bank, or elsewhere.
Agreed.
This is the issue. The third subject you brought up, I will leave that, since we always have issues managing time.
Well, thank you both for your submissions. Let's move on to newspaper headlines across the globe. As ever, we begin with the front page of this day, and it does lead with National Security Advisor Nuhu Rubadu, who has assured Nigerians that the country will defeat the evil forces killing citizens and sacking communities all over the country. Rubadu did, of course, make these comments yesterday in Makurdi when he conveyed President Bola Tinubu's sympathies to Benue people over the series of killings in the state by suspected herdsmen. To the New Telegraph, and it leads with the International Monetary Fund saying that Nigeria's Eurobond return shows renewed investor confidence. That's as Kristalina Georgieva, of course, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, and Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, all pledged to continue to work together to scale up social spending, improve food security, and promote inclusive growth in Nigeria. Now, the IMF chief also reiterated her support for Nigeria's economic reforms. IMF boss said that they said this during a closed-door meeting with Cardoso and Edun and deputy governors of the CBN and other top officials of the Ministry of Finance on the sidelines of the IMF World Bank spring meetings taking place in Washington, D.C. The Guardian takes a slightly different stance, though. Its headline says Nigeria is walking a tightrope as the IMF sees higher inflation and lower oil prices. Now, the Punch stays on Nigeria's biggest issue dominating headlines in the country, which is unfortunately insecurity. Now, the Inspector General of Police has deployed anti-bandit squads nationwide. That's as bandits kill 18 more people in Kwara and in Benue. Similarly, the Daily Trust leads with Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia and the National Security Advisor apparently having different opinions really over the Benue killings as the death toll rises to 83 deaths in 5 days. The Vanguard 2 reports on worsening insecurity. Niger government imposes a curfew, and that says 11 people are killed also in Benue. Let's move on to African papers very quickly. We'll just take one. Ghana's Daily Graphic does lead with the information that the Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first, really, in Ghana's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed making allegations against Gertrude Tokunu, which are calling for her permanent removal. Now, Chief Justices in Ghana do enjoy the security of tenure, meaning that they can only be removed from office on a few grounds, and these include incompetence and misbehavior. Now, Ms. Tokunu is Ghana's 3rd female Chief Justice, and she was nominated in 2023 by former President Nana Akufo-Addo.
All right, unfortunately, it seems there's no time for a chat. Thank you so much, Adefemi, for that.